Warm greetings. Welcome you all in CEC-UGC Gurukul live lecture. Learner, we will talk about in this lecture about the chemical toxicology. Chemistry is part of our life. We can find chemistry everywhere. Chemistry in air, chemistry in water, chemistry in food, chemistry in cosmetics, even our personal household, our personal care things. Everywhere we can see chemistry. And the chemicals which we use day to day activities are toxic, like polychlorinated biphenyls, we also called PCBs. These are a group of toxic chemicals, and these toxic chemicals, when we are environment or when food exposed to these toxic chemicals, it can harm us. Similarly, dioxins are also a group of poisonous toxic chemicals, and these dioxins, the source of these dioxins are burning of chlorinated organic compounds, hydrocarbons, because dioxins are used for the making of pesticides. So these harmful chemicals, poisonous chemicals, when we contaminate it through food, it can affect us, it can affect our environment too. Learners, if we look around us, we are surrounded by synthetic chemicals or man-made chemicals. Over 80,000 of chemicals are registered for today use, and it is a source. It is given by United States Environmental Protection Agency. So, what is chemical toxicology? Toxic chemicals in environment, trace elements and minerals in the body, types of toxicology, toxic elements in water, impact of these toxic chemicals on enzymes, biochemical effect of lead, biochemical effects of arsenic, and biochemical effect of carbon monoxides. So these are some important topics for discussion in 1 hour lecture. Learners, if you remember the Bhopal gas tragedy, it was the case of chemical toxicity. Learners, in Bhopal gas tragedy, on the night of 2nd-3rd December in 1984, at Union Carbide pesticide making company, that plant, it was situated in Madhya Pradesh, and during the day when this incident happened, around 45 tons of methyl isocyanate gas, which is very poisonous in nature, escaped from the plant, and it killed more than 10,000 people and affected about 6 lakhs workers. And learners, it was the case of chemical toxicology. This Bhopal gas disaster, during the incident, the methyl isocyanate gas which escaped from the factory, from the company, make a white cloud. And so clearly the workers and the public of Bhopal seen the white clouds on the sky of Bhopal. And this is the methyl isocyanate. This is also called MIC. It is the structure of MIC, and it is very poisonous gas, irritating gas, corrosive to the eyes and respiratory tract and also skin. And learners, acute exposure of these methyl isocyanate can cause pulmonary edema and damage lung. learners, still the groundwater near the site of industrial accident is still toxic. So you can understand the effect of that incident. Learners, it is the worst industrial chemical disaster in the world, and this methyl isocyanate, which is used for the preparation of pesticides and fungicides, is prepared from a gas phosgene, which is also very toxic in nature. Now, what is toxicology? It is a scientific discipline. Like other discipline, the toxicology is also a branch of science. It involves the study and adverse effect of chemical substance on living organisms. And what is chemical toxicology? It is the subspecialty of toxicology that focuses on the structure of chemical agents and how it affects their, what is the mode of mechanism, and the mode of mechanism, how it affects on the living organism or even the plants. This is the chemical toxicology. And there are three types of toxic entities. These can be, that toxic entities can be chemical, biological and physical. Like that biological toxicity, in biological toxicity, the bacteria and viruses can induce different type of diseases to the humans, to the plants or into the environment. And physical toxicity, in physical toxicity there is a direct exposure of the chemicals, toxic chemicals like silicates, like lead, like sulfur dioxides. So it can cause harm to the environment and also to the human biological system. So the chemical toxicity, in chemical entities, the chemical toxicology, here the side reaction of drugs molecule of or the chemicals in the environment with DNA, with proteins. So these drug molecules can affect or interfere the enzymatic system. So this is chemical entities, when the toxic elements can interfere into the environment, DNA, proteins or enzyme of our bodies. So number of toxic chemicals present in the environment, some of these elements can be toxic and rest are non-toxic. So source of these toxic chemicals can be released from the industry, from the industrial processes, solid waste disposal, also transportation, vehicular movements, and there are many more. In fact, the animals grazing is also can release the toxic elements into the environment. So the toxic chemicals which are discharged by the industries, by vehicles into the air, water and soil, these toxic chemicals get into the human food chain from the environment, entered our biological system, and they disturb the biochemical processes and heading to the some cases fatal results. Learners, toxicology is the scientific study of adverse effect occurs in living organisms due to the chemicals, and it arises due to the exposure of toxic substances. And the chemical toxicology is the science of study of toxic chemicals and their mode of actions. So it is the chemical toxicology. Now chemical toxicology focuses on the structure of chemical agents, especially toxic chemical agents, and affects their mechanisms of action on living organisms. And the toxicity can be depending upon the concentration of that toxic elements, that toxic chemicals. The toxicity can be acute, can be chronic, subchronic, systematic, and can affect us, can affect our environment. And the toxicology and its components, it includes detection of what? Detection of toxic chemicals, toxic elements, and symptoms, pathogenesis, mechanism, mode of action, and treatment of these chemicals. So toxicology includes all these subjects. Example, if anyone have toxic chemicals which can cause serious harm to the body, so toxicology or researchers is used to understanding detection of chemical occurrence and properties. Example, in your screen you can see quinine. Quinine is a very toxic alkaloid and it can affect our biological processes, our biochemical reaction when it enters into the food through the contamination from environment. So that toxicologist also find out effects, treatments, regulation of the chemical use in order to protect human and environment from different toxicants and the hazardous effects. One important recent example we can see here, Vizag gas leak. It was also industrial accident. It happened on the 7th May on 2020, and it was also the case of chemical toxicology, chemical toxicity, and due to malfunction into the cooling system of plant of styrene tank, the gas is escaped from the tank, that is the styrene gas. You can see on your screen the structure of styrene gas. This is a volatile organic compounds and it is very toxic gas. As per NDRF, in that accident 11 deaths and more than 1,000 people became sick when they exposed themselves to this styrene gas. So this is another case of chemical toxicology. The chemical safety program designed for all employees working with hazardous chemicals including oils, including solvents. So the toxicologist conduct research that explores the chemical agents condition and their properties, and they search treatments for that specifically for that chemical agents, and they analyze the biochemical and cellular reaction, what that toxic elements how they affect on the our biological and cellular part of our body. So the toxicologist keep our world safe from chemical hazards of all kind and recommended guidelines for safe exposure limits. In 2014, California applied National Toxicology Program NTP finding about the hexavalent ingestion to the implement on the drinking water standard by setting lower limits on acceptable water levels. Now, types of toxicology. What are the toxicology we had discussed in the previous slides. Now, classification toxicology. So, the toxicology can be analytical toxicology where detection and evaluation of toxic chemicals find out. Another is clinical toxicology. In this branch, study of and diagnosis of and treatment even of chemicals mainly in humans. So, the clinical toxicology is associated with only humans where toxicologists find out the treatment and symptoms of that toxic chemicals in humans. Forensic toxicology, it is deals with the medical investigation of death, poisoning and drugs, whether the death takes place due to the poisoning, drugs or any other toxic chemicals. Another class of toxicology is environment toxicology. So, in this branch, study of presence of toxicants in the environment and their effects on human and animals. Veterinary toxicology, it is the in this branch is deals with the study of diagnosis and treatment of chemicals mainly in animals. Next is industrial toxicology. It is the selective area of environment toxicology. And another branch is applied toxicology. So, the applied toxicology is the concerned with the application of modern technology in early detection of toxic chemicals or toxicants. Now, factors which affect the chemical toxicology. So, there are many factors which affect the toxicology or toxic effects which can cause due to the chemicals, toxic chemicals. One is acute exposure, route to exposure, ingestion, skin absorption or inhalation, age, sex and health, and also environment. So, these are the some important factors that affects the chemical toxicology. So, list of toxic chemicals is very long. Currently, more than 400 environmental chemicals and their metabolites are measured in human samples. So, you can understand the effect of these toxic elements or toxic chemicals on human. So, in one research it was found that in the sample of urine, blood, serum and even breast milk, more than 400 environmental chemicals or their metabolites are found. So, these are the some toxic chemicals which is used as a pesticide or herbicides. This is TBTO and other is non-ionic surfactants, cationic surfactants, non-ionic surfactants used in detergents, in textile preparation and also these non-ionic surfactants used in dyeing industry. Cationic surfactants, these are also toxic chemicals, toxic elements, toxic compounds which used in textile dyeing and finishing also. Sodium chloride, this is used for dyeing of cotton textile. Sodium sulfate, which is used for the dyeing of cotton textile also. Copper is used for the dyeing of cotton and polyamide. Similarly, cyanide, which is very toxic chemical, it is used in anti-caking agent in salt. Toxic chemicals, there are a long list of toxic chemicals. As I told you, over 480,000 toxic chemicals are registered for their use today by United States of Environmental Protection Energy. So, there is a long list of toxic chemicals. Acrylamide and then diethyl metatoluamide, DEET, dioxins like chemicals, disinfectants by like trihalomethane, fungicides and herbicides, mainly sulfonyl compounds and herbicide, these all are contain toxic elements. There are some other toxic elements that are collectively called environmental phenols. These are benzophenols 3, bisphenols. So, these benzophenols are and bisphenols are present in our household things and personal care things. So, these are also contain toxic chemicals. Similarly, triclosan, this is also called TCS, it is also very toxic chemical. And metals, these metals when exceeded to their limits, they can be toxic, like arsenic, cadmium, lead and mercury. These can cause metals poisoning. Similarly, many volatile organic compounds like benzene, styrene, as we had discussed, the industrial accident in Vizag, Vishakhapatnam, it was due to the volatile organic compound, that was the styrene. So, all the volatile organic compounds that are aromatic hydrocarbons, they are very toxic in nature. Polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, these are also very toxic chemicals. Polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, we can see lot of examples here in even outside of the Delhi, the burning of agricultural waste. The burning of agricultural waste release a lot of polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, and they pollute our environment, and we can contaminate it, our food chain can contaminate it from these chemicals, and in that way they finally entered into human body, in animals also. So another is a phthalate. Phthalate is a very toxic industrial chemicals, and this phthalate is used to soften PVC, plastic, and used as a solvent in cosmetics, and also found in processed food, fast food or baked foods. So you can understand these chemicals also present in our food, and when these chemicals exceed their limits, can damage liver, kidneys, lungs and also our reproductive organs. So along with that, the up to the exposure limits, because our agencies set a certain amount, so up to the exposure levels, phthalates do not risk to human health, but when it limits exceed, it can cause very harmful effect on our biological system. So on your screen you are looking here different types of elements like calcium, iron, zinc, phosphorus, sulfur. These are not toxic elements, these are the trace elements, and these trace elements are used, are present in our body in the trace amount, small amounts. So this is the structure of phthalates, and here you can see this is a aromatic ring, and along with that it is a artificial chemical. As I told you, this chemical is used to soften the plastic and making them more flexible and more durable. So people and animals can be exposed through different routes to this phthalates, to ingestion, inhalation, or through the dermal or iatrogenic exposure. So iatrogenic exposure is the problem induced due to medical treatment or improper drug exposures. Now, as I told you, there are different minerals or metals which are present in small amounts, and these are needed for many physiological and biological processes in plants and animals, and these elements are calcium, magnesium, iron, zinc, sodium and phosphorus. So these are called trace elements. So learner, in this part we had discussed about what is the chemical toxicology, what are the toxicology branch, and we had seen there are different types of branches, and that branches deals with different subjects, and harmful effect of that toxic chemicals on biological system. So in coming lecture we will discuss about the biochemical effect of different metals like lead. We will discuss the lead poisoning, arsenic poisoning, and along with some important topic. Thank you.